This next case is sending shockwaves across this country this morning. It is difficult, but it's something we need to talk about. There are urgent calls to establish a national watchdog for Australia's childcare industry, as a Melbourne man is charged with more than 70 crimes against children in centres across Victoria. Peak childcare bodies are now demanding a review into our working with children checks, saying change is urgently needed to prevent further nightmares like this one. For their take, let's bring in Housing Minister Clare O'Neil and National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie. Good morning to you. Clare, more than 2,000 families in this country have to check if their children were sexually abused. What needs to change?
Yeah. Well, Nat, can I just first say I'm a parent of a child in childcare in Victoria, and this has been enormously upsetting news for all of us here. You know, we take so much care of our children, and then to place your trust in an institution and to have it betrayed in this way, it is just awful. And I just want to say to Victorian parents, you know, we stand with you as you're trying to process this. I was so panicked yesterday looking on that list to see if any of my kids have been affected in any of these centres, and I know parents, thousands of parents around Victoria are having to go through these discussions with their children that we just would never want a parent to have to talk to a child about. And so I just say, from a human perspective, this is absolutely awful. Now, you've talked about some of the regulatory issues. There is going to be, you know, a very fierce and appropriate discussion about what needs to change to ensure that this kind of thing cannot happen again. You know, Bridget and I are from different sides of politics. You're not going to find this being politicised, of course. Every politician, every leader, every regulator in our country is going to be poring over this case to understand how things could have been done differently. Our Minister, Jason Clare, has made a statement yesterday just pointing to some of the things that are already happening across the Commonwealth and the states. But please, you know, for the public to just understand, you know, we are desperately concerned about what's happened here, and we'll be looking at every step that we can take to try to address the situation.
So these hundreds and hundreds of families not only have to find out if their child was sexually abused, they have to check if their kid has a sexually transmitted disease. Bridget, this is absolutely horrifying. Do we need some kind of national watchdog here?
Nat and Claire, I was reading these stories, and I'm just so thankful my kids are through childcare. I can't imagine what it would be like. I mean, childhood needs to be innocent, needs to be enjoyed, and to have those conversations when I just can't imagine it. So, I mean, it's horrific. These monsters need to be identified, they need to be locked up, and parents need to have confidence in our childcare system that their children will be safe from these type of predators. So I absolutely back the calls for a review of the safeguards, and I know, as Claire said, everyone on all sides of politics will want to be getting measures in place to absolutely get this sort of behaviour out of our childcare centres and society more generally.
Because it's Victoria today, but I can guarantee you everyone around the country is looking and reading this story and being horrified, so we will keep on it. Yep. Moving on, Foreign Minister Penny Wong has met with her US counterpart in Washington, where defence spending and a face-to-face meeting between our PM and the President was reportedly on the agenda. Claire, we're still waiting to hear what exactly was discussed between the pair, but reports today suggest the Minister was going to open our budget books to explain why we aren't increasing military spending to the amount the US wants. Do you think that will satisfy the Americans?
Well, Penny Wong's going to be pointing to a few key things here. One of them is that Australia's government has increased our defence spending. Over that last 3 years, we've put in place an additional $57 billion in spending. And we're doing that, Bridget, not because we've faced, you know, calls or pressure from other countries around the world, but because our government's undertaken a really sober assessment of the national security situation, looked at what skills, capabilities and assets we need to defend our country, and worked backwards from there to fund those new acquisitions. So that's the approach that we'll continue to take. We take these matters incredibly seriously. We have a really long partnership with the US that will continue to be retained, but we're proud of that really important work that happened in the first term, and it will continue in this term.
Bridget, do you think that'll cut it with Trump?
I don't think Secretary Rubio will take kindly being schooled by Minister Wong on our budget. The reality is, whether it's their calls for 3.5% for us or 5% for the EU, the US wants to see us investing more in our defence capability so that we can do our fair share here at home, but also play our role in what's an increasingly precariously challenging geopolitical situation in our own region. So they want to see an increase in spending, Claire, so that our capability in kit, in people and skills, but the situation, as you would appreciate, as our security agencies have made clear and defence experts too, has changed significantly and is increasingly more precarious. So you need to adjust to that situation. So we want to see increased spending, and I don't think the US will be taking kindly to being schooled by Minister Wong. They want to see increased spending. They want to see it now.
Yeah, we'll ask Penny Wong. We're going to talk to her very soon. Finally, large areas of regional New South Wales and South Australia will no longer receive live and free TV coverage of the AFL, the cricket and more after the WIN network shut off transmissions from Channel 7. Now, 7 CEO Jeff Howard says, "We have been unable to reach a mutually acceptable commercial agreement with the WIN network for the Riverland, Griffith and Mount Gambier areas." He says 7 is continuing to provide content for WIN for broadcast, providing the signal, but that WIN had made the decision to switch off the 7 signal to these communities. Claire, so should broadcasters be allowed to hold on to their licence if they're not delivering the local news and the Aussie stories regional communities rely on?
Well, it is concerning, Nat, and you brought football into it, and you know I don't think we've ever had a bigger footy fan in the lodge than we do at the Albanese. So this is the thing I know that's going to really worry him. We are very aware of this issue. I know our fantastic communications minister Annika Wells has asked the parties to work together, and also is talking to her regulator about whether there's any regulatory action that can be taken here. So the government is concerned about that. We want footy to flow freely across the country, and so the government's working with networks on trying to resolve this.
Yeah, it sounds like they've just turned it off. Bridget, what's your message to regional voters who've lost live AFL, local bulletins due to WIN's decision to turn off the signal?
Well, Nat, this is our cultural practice as sport, particularly in the regions. It's our bread and butter. Access on free-to-air TV for football, cricket, and I would also argue netball needs to be able to be seen by everyday Australians through free-to-air TV. Now, government regulation has meant that it is increasingly difficult for free-to-air TV to operate and be sustainable. The government needs to get involved, not, Annika, sit them down for a little chat. These are commercial entities having to make commercial decisions because the environment they're operating in isn't financially sustainable. So that's what needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Because we want to watch our sport in the regions.
That's pretty scathing. Claire, you're going to make sure that Annika does more than get them in a room and have a chat?
Well, I don't think Annika needs any advice from me or respectfully from Bridget about how to handle this matter. She's completely on top of this. And, I agree with what a lot of what Bridget said there. We do want sport flowing into our suburbs where I am now, but also into our regions. And the government's working with the networks to try to get this corrected.
Okay. Well, let's hope it gets sorted out and the viewers aren't held to ransom. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Here's David.
Yeah.